So I started writing it about a year before I joined the writer's studio. It is a novel, or the story is about this young woman who's running her own hair salon in Vancouver. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was writing about a young woman finding herself in a new city. And at that time, I've also just moved out of my mother's and living alone for the first time. And so I guess there was a parallel there that, at the time I wasn't very conscious of that. But I was writing it in around 2012, and then I used the draft of the first chapter to apply to the writer's studio. And then when I was at the writer's studio, it was my first time attending a proper writer's workshop, and it was very nerve-wracking because it's also my first book-length project, and people were having to critique it, and I received so much feedback that was helpful to help advance the project. But it was also the entire experience was also very, very daunting for me because I'm having to provide feedback to other people as well, other people's writing. So yeah, it's very helpful for my growth as a writer. It was downtown, Harbor Center. It's very close to where I worked. At the time, I was working around near the provincial courthouse. So in the evening, I would just walk over and become a writer, not an office worker. But after the program, though, it took several more years to actually finish the novel. I interviewed hairstylists. Whenever I'm getting a haircut, I'm having to observe my surroundings and observing, how the stylists behave. Before I wrote the novel, I didn't really know much about hairstyling. I like the idea of writing about a hairstylist because I like that I like this idea that they are perfecting their craft within a space. There's some sort of control there, some independence, but then at the same time, they're also providing a service that many people would not consider. I guess it can be seen as something not so essential, right? Because it's about being good looking and being, having nice hair. But it's actually a very important service. People would like to look good and look themselves, and it takes so much talent and skill to do a proper haircut or to get people to look great. And every story or novel I write comes from an emotion or some sentiment that I want to explore. When I was writing, or when I first came up with the idea for Cine Star Salon, I just like the idea of a young woman who wants to start something for herself, her own business, or her following her own passions. But then, now that I've written it and it's been published, looking back, I think I was also trying to explore the idea of boundaries. One of the central conflict in Cine Star Salon is that Sophia, the main character, has a friend, an older friend in Manila, who is running her own hair salon. Her name is Rosie. She's called Auntie Rosie because she's an older lady. But and the conflict is that Auntie Rosie is having to ask Sophia for money to help maintain her salon. It turns out that she's not a very good businesswoman, and Sophia is torn between trying to help out an old friend, someone who helped introduce her to how fun being a hairstylist is, and basically having her discover her own passion for it. But then at the same time, realizing that Auntie Rosie is maybe not a fit person to run a business, and maybe it's best for her to just close down the salon. And I think it's Sophia, the main character, having to navigate that and finding that balance between being generous and caring, and also setting a boundary for herself and deciding when, telling someone you care for that maybe what they want is not the best course of action for them. I heard about Magdaragat from Ted Alquitas, one of the editors, and he reached out to me through social media. It turns out that he was it's I think John M. Chu from the Asian Canadians Writer Workshop, who read my novel, told him about me, another Filipino novelist, And yeah, so Ted got in touch with me. We met downtown and we had coffee there. And he was telling me about this anthology, the first of its kind. It's going to be a collection of works from Filipino-Canadians all over Canada. So yeah, I didn't have a specific project in mind then, but I was glad to be invited. I think it's such a landmark project, and I'm glad that my work made it in. I wrote a short story called Foragers. At its core, it's a story about displacement. It's about this awkward situation where this father recruited his adult children to help impress a new date, a possibly new girlfriend, and the story is being told from the point of view of the daughter, one of the children who's cooking their dinner, and there is this strange conflict between being loyal to her mother and also, but at the same time wanting this date to work out, seeing that possibility that this woman might help his father become a better man. So I like fiction because it allows you to hold something at a distance, because you're having to make up characters, having to make up situations, but the core emotions in it are something that's true, something that I usually could relate with, and I continue to work on short stories. I'm working on a second novel, which is darker. It's set during the pandemic, and I think all the things I write even though they're made up with fictional characters and such, they're based on some deep emotion or question that I'd like to pursue or explore.